You were live.
Good afternoon. It's the Senate Education Committee, April 11th, 1:30. We are on the miscellaneous education bill, H 480. And we have with us Jennifer Samuelson, the chair of the State Board of Education. And the issue we wanted to discuss with Chair Samuelson is the part of the bill, which section is it? Who's got it in front of them? It's part of the bill that deals with
Section 8.
has the time frame for the state board to begin its search in the event for education secretary in the event that position becomes vacant at any time. And
Section 9,
is it section 9?
it says Secretary of Education. Could fall under that.
Yeah, page 10.
Page 10. So, and Jen, you and I talked yesterday, and the part you recall, and we've talked about this a couple times now, so you know what the question is for us. The question is the notion that the two issues are the word begin, shall begin a search process, and then within 60 days, and we had all the questions that kind of came up for what does begin mean, and to the extent we figure out what begin means is 60 days of reasonable time frame. So I think you were going to talk to us about your procedures as they exist now, and maybe help us think through how to deal with that issue.
Sure. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. For the record, Jennifer Jack Samuelson, chair of the State Board of Education. And I did send to the committee earlier this week the slide deck that I'd prepared. I think it was January of 2024, because I came in and presented to Senate Ed the composition of the committee at that point about the board's search for a new Secretary of Education. And I realize there are new members on the committee this year, so some of you have seen it before. Didn't mean to give you double work that you've already seen, but for the new members of the committee, I thought it might be helpful just to ground the conversation about how the board conducted the search that led to Secretary Saunders being appointed by Governor Scott. And then, to Senator Bongart's point about, defining working, what constitute work begins, and the question about 60 days. So I can jump right in, or I don't know, particularly for new committee members, if there are questions about the search that the board conducted the last time.
So Jen,
They not online because it wasn't going to be for the testimony, but I should have forwarded to you earlier in the week, and I just forwarded it again in case it was lost and emailed her background information.
So good. Okay, got it. Sorry for interrupting. Go ahead. Yeah, I just couldn't find the slide back.
Okay. I mean, would it be helpful to sort of just briefly go through the prior process, or is everyone up to speed on that?
No, I think go through it quickly.
Okay. So as you all have noticed, 3 VSA 2702 doesn't have a whole lot of meat to it. It just basically says that the State Board of Education shall provide up to 3 candidates to the governor for the governor's or not fewer than 3 candidates to the governor. And as you could imagine, I mean, that's the final destination. There's nothing in there that says, well, how do we get there and what does that look like? So we put together a secretary search committee. I chaired it. I was joined by Lyle Jepson and Jenna O'Farrell. So it was a 3-person committee. The committee met 11 times in a 2.5-month period, and really started from the very beginning of how do we conduct a secretary search, because none of us had ever done that before. And we were given some really good guidance by the Office of Human Resources, or Department of Human Resources. And I understand that prior secretary searches had not had the benefit of the Department of Human Resources. That was kind of new for this search that we just concluded. And that was really invaluable to us because, we had someone who could guide us with, what we might want to include in the job description, where we might want to post the job description. They reviewed the job description for us and then also provided us with a handbook, which became my Bible for those 2.5 months of, types of questions to think about, how to structure an interview, sample letters to write to candidates. So it was enormously helpful to the board. We also had the Office of Racial Equity review our job description before we posted it. And so we spent a lot of time at the beginning of our meetings thinking about what were we looking for in a candidate. We consulted the statute and then we sort of came up with the practical, what does the secretary do? We drafted the job description, had it vetted, and then figured out where to post it. And we ran the posting for about a month.
Before you posted it, how much time had you put in? How much time did you put into the process you just described?
So it was a 2.5 month period. I want to say probably 6 weeks plus or minus, because as I recall, I think it was in our August 2023 full board meeting that we stood up the committee. And then I think we posted the job by October.
Okay, pretty quite quickly then.
Yeah, I can.
That's okay. Just tell us if you figure out later that it was different than that. Just send it over or something. But
Okay, sure.
we hear you.
Yeah. So the position was open from September 13th to October 12th. So I'll revise what I just said. The committee was up and running for maybe 4 weeks before we posted the position. And you might recall in the letter that we initially received from the governor's office, we were given 6 weeks to conclude the search, which caused me a little bit of agita. And I actually called the governor's office. The State Board of Ed is kind of like a barge. We don't pivot quickly. And the letter, it came in August, and we had our monthly board meeting that was scheduled relatively soon. But, right there, we lost a week because the State Board of Ed hadn't met to receive the letter and stand up the committee. And the governor's office was very understanding about that and just said, it's totally fine. More time is completely acceptable. So we had the job position open for about a month. We received, I think, 19 applications and conducted 7 interviews. Each one of those interviews was scheduled for 1 hour and 15 minutes. And then the other thing that Lyle and Jenna and I did once we posted the job position while we were waiting to receive the applications was we brainstormed candidate questions. And then we went through and we scored, how each one of us liked various questions. And we came up with 15 questions, and we used those 15 questions for each one of our interviews. Lyle had his questions, Jenna had her questions, I had my questions. And we also created a scoring rubric where before we met with the candidates, we talked about, why are we asking this question? Why is this important to us? What would a model answer look like to us? And then once we were actually interviewing candidates, we scored each question. And then when we were done with the interviews, the 3 of us met to discuss the candidates, what we liked, what we didn't like, how our scoring rubrics compared. And then ultimately we brought our selection and recommendation to the full board. We met an executive session with the full board, and out of that came 3 candidates who were then forwarded to the governor's office for his interview, consideration, and decision.
So how much of that, the first part of the work before or to the point of posting, were you able to do some or all of that over Zoom?
Yeah, well, all of our meetings were online for that.
Oh, because it was that time. Okay. And did
But even still, I think because this was 2023, so we didn't have to have those meetings online, but we did, just because we were on a pretty short
Yeah,
timeframe.
makes total sense. I'm just wondering which way you did it. And what about the interviews themselves? Did you do those once you got to the interviews? Did you do those in person or did you do those over online as well?
We did those over Zoom as well.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay.
Oh, and then
Thank
the
you.
one other thing that I will mention that we did, which I consider, an improvement upon prior practices, in addition to crafting this whole secretary search in open meeting. I don't think that had happened in prior secretary searches. We also actually had a public comment hearing where we invited the public to come and discuss what qualities and attributes they were looking for in a secretary. And as part of that, the VSA, VSBA, VPA sent out an email blast to their constituents. And so not only did we have people coming in and speaking about the qualities they were looking for, but those three organizations also compiled written responses from their constituents and forwarded that to the board. So we really had a lot of aspects that we could consider, and then we could weave those traits into the questions that we asked the candidates. So I felt like it was a pretty open, comprehensive process that we were able to accomplish on a shoestring budget in a pretty short period of time.
Senator Williams had a question.
So this doesn't pertain to the time period for the selection, but subparagraph C says at the time of appointment, the secretary shall have expertise in education management and policy and demonstrate leadership and management abilities. Did you come up, or did personnel management come up with a position description out of this process?
We do, and the position description that we crafted is hyperlinked in the slide deck. So yes, we did weave those statutory requirements into the job description.
Okay. So is that going to be the standard now when you're searching for a Secretary of Education?
I mean, if you're asking me personally, I think that's best practice because we would want to ensure that our job description is aligned with what's required by statute.
Right. So I'm just wondering if that's too general, something that I see.
Too general.
Yeah.
I think it's general and it's vague purpose.
Okay, well,
It's not
we
supposed to be a
reference-
job description.
should you reference a job position or description?
No, I think give them the latitude. That's their mission.
Okay.
It's just my,
So Jen, am I right that the board didn't move sooner on this because you were waiting for a letter from the governor asking you to start the process? Is that correct or incorrect?
That is correct. That is the guidance that we received from the Attorney General's office. And that is consistent with prior practice where, as I understood it, the secretary search commenced with a letter from the governor requesting us to do that pursuant to statute.
Okay. Yes.
can I ask, is your point the difference between being notified by the governor and have the resignation of the,
Well, and or the begin process. Yeah. I think this section, I'm hypothesizing, but I think this section is somehow in response to the fact that the position sat open for a long time. And you had been waiting for a letter. My point isn't to retread the history. It doesn't, on one level, it doesn't matter. It only matters what we're trying to accomplish here and why. So this is changing the process then. So you would no longer be waiting for a letter from the governor. That would be history. That process would be history. It would be a matter of when the secretary resigned. I wonder what would happen if the secretary gave notice when you would actually want to start the process while that person is still in office. Maybe that notion of public notification of the resignation works in that if the notice were given with 6 months notice that I'm leaving at the end of the year. maybe that works the way it's written and you can still begin. I guess my question was, we want to make sure that we don't have to do something that doesn't make any sense, which is wait until the person is actually out of office before beginning the search. So we want to check that with Matt.
Do we want the new secretary to have time to interface with the outgoing?
I mean, if that's usually good if the opportunity comes,
Right.
but okay. So we'll check with counsel on that. Go ahead.
And that's just for clarity. Jennifer, the letter that you received from the governor, I just can't recall it right now, but did it contain some of the guidance that you used in the job description and some guidance that you used in the overall search? Was that-
He did refer to the statute, and again, that was hyperlinked in the slide deck. So you should have a copy of it in your materials. So his letter, I'm just pulling it up. It starts with pursuant to 3 VSA section 2702. I'm writing to ask the State Board of Education to initiate the candidate selection process for a new Secretary of Education. And then, it kind of goes through the governor's goals, and in order to be able to achieve those goals, these are the things that he was interested in. And again, we did weave these elements into the job description. We took that information as well to help craft the job description.
So can I put Senator Baumgart's comment into a question? Would you consider it awkward to initiate the search process without having the governor's guidance?
I mean, I feel like that's really a policy choice for you all to make. And again, let me also be clear. The board has not had a conversation about this because we're meeting next week. So if you want like a full response from the board, I'm happy to raise this and then come back to the committee. But what I would say, if I were still the chair, and I received a notification from the governor, I would commence the search. If I were told by statute to commence the search, I would contact the governor's office. And I will say, I did contact the governor's office because the funny thing about the board conducting the search is we only know what the secretary does from the board's perspective, which gets back to how does one craft a job description? And so I actually called Dan French, the outgoing secretary, and said, please, describe to me what you did. What are some high level things that you think are important for us to know as we're looking for a secretary? And I also contacted the governor's office and I said, what does the secretary do that the governor's office would articulate that we need to know about to be able to put into the job description and raise in interviews? So, I mean, back to your question, would it feel awkward? I mean, I think I personally would say it would be best practice to consult with the outgoing secretary and the governor's office and just make sure that everyone's on the same page. And the order that happens maybe doesn't feel as critical to me as much as the fact that it gets done.
Follow-up.
Yeah, just as a follow-up if I could. So, and I know this is a policy question, but I'm asking for an opinion if you're willing to give one. So in as it's written that the state board would begin a national search process no later than 60 days after public notification. Do you think that should be notification of the resignation of the Secretary of Education or notification from the governor's office to initiate the search? It's two different timelines.
Right.
That's kind of like, I think that's the crux of the question.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I don't have an opinion on that because I think if you take that initiation authority away from the governor and, put it in statute and just, say that the State Board of Ed has 60 days. I mean, now you've made a policy choice that's taking what had been the governor's power away from the governor and just putting it in statute. So I'm kind of agnostic. I mean, we do what we're told.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
So, page 10, line 13 is what we should kind of pay attention that the secretary is going to be at the pleasure of the governor. obviously, I would think that the governor should be the one to initiate because it's for his secretary. And I don't know how we put that in policy, but
I mean, we could have this say that, you know,
the
the,
worry of that to me though is what happened, and I didn't follow it closely. How long were we without a secretary?
yeah, that's, how long, Jen, how long was that? That you were-
And again, I'm kind of going back on memory. I feel like Dan stepped down, I want to say April of 23. If that kind of jives with other people's memory, it was, spring 2023. We received the letter in August to conduct the search. We made recommendations to the governor's office by November of 23. And then I think Zoe was announced in spring of 24.
So it ended up being a year.
Almost a year from the time Dan, stepped down until the time that Zoe was officially named.
Okay. So I think, so you were able to, once you got the letter, you as a board did not have, it sounds like you did not have a hard time getting the announcement out within the 60 days suggested in H480. Or was it actually, when I say not a hard time, that only reflects the fact you did it, I guess. Question is, was it how hard was it? And is that a reasonable time frame? Which, whatever we set as a starting point.
So if you're looking at us getting a job announcement posted within 60 days, and not just standing up a committee, right? I mean, because the board often does its work by standing up committees. Standing up a committee within 60 days feels completely fine to me. Having a job posted within 60 days could be ambitious because, again, unless the board holds special meetings, we meet once a month, and to have a committee meet, and future committees, I will say, will have the benefit of the work that my committee did. So hopefully they won't feel like they're starting from scratch. But for us, it was ambitious. I mean, we got it out, I guess, in 6 weeks. From the time we received the letter, stood up the committee, had a couple of meetings, crafted the job description, and got it posted. That was about 6 weeks, and that was a lot. I mean, we met several times to be able to get that the job application out the door.
So what do people think here? This is a little bit of a, yes.
Couple different perspectives, whether the committee should be requiring that the governor initiate the search process, which includes the state board within a certain time frame. And then whether the state board has a limitation, guidance to initiate their search, or one of the above or none of the above. It's kind of the boil it all down. That's kind of what we're trying to decide.
Yeah. So, any question is there ever a reason why the governor's office would purposely drag its feet and make this go on for a long time? That's happening. We're trying to get them out. I don't.
Typically, the appointments are late. I mean, maybe if he's busy and staff forgot to say, hey, oh, by the way, you got these appointments you have to fill, and these positions are vacant, and you need to have. So, if there was a long timeline, I think whether that's 6 months, 6 weeks, is giving her enough time.
So Jen, what I think I heard you say also is that if we did it the way it's suggested in 480 right now, one of the first things you would do would be to contact the governor's office. The board would contact the governor's office and say, we're about to begin a search. would you please send us the sort of the elements you're looking for in a new secretary? So we
Yeah.
can would accomplish the same thing that got accomplished this time. Just
Yes.
different, just in a different starting point.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And also, let me just, because I'm remembering, I mean, in the governor's letter, one of the reasons for, why the letter was sent in August as opposed to perhaps earlier was the summer that we had a lot of flooding. And I think, again, going back to the letter, I think there were things that were pulling the governor in different directions. So to the question about why would a governor wait 60 days, I mean, that's really a question for the governor's office, and I don't mean to answer that for them, but I do remember that was in the letter.
Okay.
How about we use that wonderful word promptly, but no longer than X amount of days?
Or as soon as reasonably possible, or you guys can.
Good. And first question, I think is the one Senator Weeks has been asking is, do we want this to be prompted by the letter from the governor? I don't have strong feelings. I'm just trying to, in fact, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out with you what the best.
Yeah, personally, I think it would be, if I was filling a position like this,
You're the governor.
I would outline what my priorities are for that candidate or for the next Secretary of Education. To me, that'd be very important. Say hypothetically that you want to take the state down the route of international baccalaureate versus American curriculum, just hypothetically, right? It's a completely different, steers you down a completely different path. That would change the job description dramatically. So that's the governor's prerogative, because it's the Secretary of Service, the governor's prerogative.
So I think though that I'm not disagreeing actually, but Chair Samuelson said they would get to that same thing just through a different mechanism of asking the governor what the criteria are that he or she would be looking for.
But I think that should be formal, so that everybody in the landscape sees it.
Right.
That's very important.
Fair enough.
As soon as he officially announced that he was done, I should have stimulated some kind of activity.
Yes.
And I think too that that approach makes sense. Particularly, I think this secretary, the Secretary of Education, is the only secretary position in the governor's cabinet, correct me if I'm wrong, where the governor is not directly hiring and making that selection. So I think it would, again, I'm just speaking on my own behalf here, not because I haven't discussed this with the board, but I could imagine that there might, if the governor were just selecting a secretary by him or herself, the governor would come up with a list of attributes that were important to the position. But since the governor doesn't have that ability here, because the State Board of Ed is the one conducting the search, it would seem to make sense to me to have some possibility for the governor to communicate that list of attributes to the board, since the secretary doesn't work for the board.
Who made this recommendation?
I don't know, but it came over to us from the House.
I'm just curious what the genesis of it is.
I think, it's just fairly obvious. It took a year to get a secretary from resignation to nomination process. And that's what people reacted negatively to, that span of time. So they're trying to solve it. The language as it sits doesn't solve it. It certainly creates a part of the catalyst to finish, to get from notification, from resignation to new secretary, but it doesn't really wrap up the whole problem.
Yeah. I figured that was the event that caused this, but I'm curious if this was language from the AOE or board itself, or
Says introduced by a committee on education.
So we know it wasn't from the Board of Ed.
It's a committee zone.
Yeah.
right. I know it came from the House. I'm not.
Yeah. No, I understand.
What comes from the House, though, is often, there are people who testify and bring in ideas. I'm just curious if it brought the idea forward, or if it was a legislator.
Yeah, it was hoping to see who was introduced by.
As originally initiated, it was a committee of education.
So I've just written down, we could step, and maybe this is, I mean, we could just take this out and forget it, because the process would work as the way it has in the past. Or we could say that upon receipt of a letter from the governor, the board shall, we could say post within 90 days, post the job within 90 days, and give it the time in between to, does that seem reasonable? Would 90 days seem reasonable from the time of the letter to
It
actually do
does.
the thing?
Yeah.
You know, we could say as whoever one of you said this, as soon as possible, but no longer than 90 days shall.
That way it shows some urgency, but you have some play.
Doesn't really solve the problem. So I don't agree that there was a real problem.
Well, I just said after the receipt of the letter from the governor.
Right, no, I get that now. No, I agree. That's a trigger.
Yeah.
But how it gets all the way through the process and gets to the point of the real nomination that comes here to the committee and then goes to the chamber, doesn't solve that. I'm not sure it needs to be.
I do want to correct one thing I said, which may not matter so much for the committee, but I'm reflecting, and we actually did have a job description for, I believe it was the job search that led to Dan French being picked. So I didn't want to mislead the committee. We did have prior materials to go off of that and we had some meeting minutes that we were able to sort of piece together what happened. So I don't want to suggest that we were completely in the dark, which, just to put that out there.
Okay, what do we want to do?
I'm prepared to do it. It's the mindset that if it's not broken, you don't have to fix it. So I don't have much of an opinion really on this.
I like your point about as soon as possible, but no later than to get the process started. You know, because maybe the governor was hoping he could talk to Secretary French and talk him out of it, but who knows why it took so long to do it.
So if we're trying to show any kind of response to this section, I would recommend that this line 14 start with the governor shall notify the state board to initiate a national search process no later than 60 days, blah, 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 blah. Leave it at that. What happens after that, you know, the state board does their bit, then it comes back to the governor, he does his bit, and then eventually it ends in a nomination. I'm not sure that's really necessary to put a time boundary in, but if we're trying to show some responsiveness, the governor initiating,
Is that not what they already do? It sounds like
within
they get a letter.
60 days. Within
Yeah.
60 days. That's, somebody wants 60 days to see some activity. At least that gives, it's the right chain of events. First chain of event is not the State Board of Education being limited to 60 days to start doing their activity. It's really about the governor giving his guidance to the State Board of Education so that they initiate their activity. That's where I think the people want some expediency. But again, I'm trying to figure out what the real goal is here, besides reacting to.
Yeah, because you don't want to say you had to rush. Rush the search.
Right.
So I like that, yeah.
I hope.
A search takes as long as it does, as long as you are searching, but you should start that search.
So in the event that someday, if this isn't a reference to the current governor or whoever, in the event that someday there's a governor who wants to just disrupt the process and decide, you know what, I'm just not gonna send a letter and we're not gonna have a secretary. Is that? Doesn't really seem a little concerning, but
now that statute was set that, he'd have to, correct, if it's in the statute.
Nobody can.
But I mean, I guess also what I just described, I guess could also be seen as a moot point because, I mean, the board would do its search. Let's say this passes, the board does its search and they send names to the governor. And if this hypothetical governor does want to be an obstructionist, we just wouldn't take anything.
So
So
back.
just thinking of different situations.
But maybe we're trying to micromanage something that
That's what it kind of feels like.
going with your first instinct, we could just Okay,
Leave it the way it is.
yeah,
And then we'll have to amend it.
the only thing I wonder about is, do we want to clarify just for the future board that their process starts with a letter from the governor? Just say that. Because was there any ambiguity in your mind about whether you should have been starting a process? Or were you just thinking, no, we're waiting for the letter from the governor?
Yes, and that was the guidance that we got from the Attorney General's office based on how it had happened in the past, that it started with the letter from the governor's office.
All right, then there's no ambiguity to clarify them. Okay, well, let's pick this back up when we have that then, and because we're running slightly, just so we don't get behind here. Thank you. That was
All
really,
right.
that was really helpful. Yeah, and we'll see if we want to talk to you again.
All right. Yeah, if you have any other questions, just let me know.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too. So we're switching gears slightly to school employee healthcare, and we have Susan Pulaski here from the Vermont School Boards Association. And this is really just looking, I guess, at options for how this works.
Yeah.
Since we're looking at the larger picture. So introduce yourself, you know everybody here, so introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Sue Saglowski, and I'm the Executive Director for the Vermont School Boards Association, and I appreciate the chance to speak with you today. I'm here to talk about how Vermont handles health insurance for public school employees and why we believe that needs some changes. Health insurance is expensive. Right now, the cost of providing health benefits to school employees is taking up more and more of school budgets. And when that happens, it leaves less money for other important things like literacy, mental health supports, arts programs, and even building repairs. School boards want to take care of staff with great benefits, but we also have to make sure there's enough funding for students and learning. And that's why I'm asking lawmakers to look at the way we bargain for school employee health insurance at the state level. The next round of this process starts in the spring of 2026, and it is going to set the rules for the benefits through at least 2030. If we want to make real improvements, we have to start now. Current system hasn't helped slow down rising costs. For example, employees don't pay anything toward deductibles because of a benefit that puts a special account called a health reimbursement arrangement, an HRA, on top of their regular plan. And that raises the price of the plans, and taxpayers pick up most of the tab. Before 2018, each school district made its own deals about employee health insurance. But in 2018, lawmakers said, let's do this statewide, and created a group called the Commission on Public School Employee Health Benefits. And that commission has 10 members. 5 of them are appointed by the Vermont School Boards Association, and 5 represent school employees. This group negotiates how much of the health insurance premium cost the school pays and how much the employee pays, how the out-of-pocket costs like co-pays or deductibles are handled, whether schools provide HRAs or HSAs, who has first dollar responsibility for those out-of-pocket expenses if using an HRA, and whether leftover money in those accounts rolls over from year to year. Each side collects data from schools in the fall before negotiations begin. So that we're scheduled to start this fall.
Just to interrupt, who are the 10?
Who are the 10?
Yeah.
There are 5 appointed by the Vermont School Boards Association and 5 appointed to represent employees. Yes.
Yep.
The talks would officially start by April of 2026, so a year from now. And once those get started, if the commission can't come to an agreement by August 1, a neutral person called a fact finder steps in to help them work things out. If that does not work, the fact finder writes up a report suggesting a reasonable settlement. If they're still stuck after that, both sides submit their last best offers to an arbitrator. The arbitrator or arbitrators have to pick one of those offers. There's no mixing of ideas and no edits. In both past rounds, the arbitrators picked the employee's offer. So this is what we're asking for. We're asking to make the process a bit more fair and balanced so that important factors are considered. Here's what we're suggesting. Add 2 new things for the arbitrator to think about when choosing a deal. And those are how the school health plans compare to what's offered through Vermont Health Connect, and whether the cost of these benefits is growing faster than the state's economy. And then secondly, let the arbitrator build a compromise from parts of both sides' offers instead of having to choose just one. Looking ahead, you might also want to consider having one administrator manage all the HRAs statewide so that it's more efficient. Perhaps adding a neutral person or people to the commission, and setting a maximum value on how much the benefits can cost and phasing that in over time. The bottom line really is that schools need to take care of their staff and also make sure that students are getting the best education possible. And if we don't get healthcare costs under control, students will keep losing out. Thank you very much for listening, and we hope that you'll support some changes that keep Vermont schools strong for everyone.
Did you, what you just read, is that what we have here?
Yes,
That's what you forward.
I summarized what I,
Do something.
yeah,
Thank you.
Very nicely. Thank you.
you're welcome.
And you're, okay, that's what you're looking for specifically.
Yes, and we could give you, specific statutory language as well.
Well, that's always helpful. Gee, I look at this, so, questions?
So what, any arbitration issues or legalities about doing what you want to do as far as the union's concerned?
I think you'd probably have to ask them that question. Yeah.
All right,
I'm happy to respond.
okay.
So
So for the record, you
oh,
are.
sorry, I'm Rebecca McBroom. I'm the general counsel for Vermont NEA. I have been handling the arbitration process since we moved to the statewide healthcare process, which I will say was vociferously advocated for by the School Boards Association. So that's why we're here. And it's gotten a little bit lengthier every time. We have fact finding that lasts for 5 days. We have several witnesses that testify on both sides. And then the arbitration itself has a panel of 3 arbitrators that are mutually selected. And I believe this last time we had 5 days of hearing. I think we had 8 witnesses testify, some health experts, some members, some teachers, and the School Board Association had a similar amount. So I do think the process as it stands is fair, and the issues get vetted very carefully over long periods of time. So I would say that, every minute detail is really examined by these experts that are the arbitrators. I would also just add that our members pay a massive amount of money in healthcare premiums alone. For our support staff, just to give you an idea, our paraprofessionals pay 30% of their salary towards healthcare premiums. So the fault is really not on the members. It's just this incredibly massive cost of healthcare that just keeps going up. The premiums increased over 30% in the last 2 years. So I'm happy to offer more testimony and details if you all have any questions for me.
You had your own also part, so then Senator Sheen.
I guess my first question, maybe the chair or committee in general, is this not a health and welfare or finance committee issue? Because I don't recall ever dealing with collective bargaining or statewide bargaining in this committee. I know I've been here one previous session, but this seems like a different territory.
I think it may be, but it's also part of school costs. So relevant that way. We're not taking this up formally, by the way. We're not going to bill. This is just beginning to think about the issue. Go ahead.
In your statement of, trying to take the best of two worlds and combine them, what's any of you feel about that?
Well, I think the purpose of that in the original bill language is the whole purpose of this bargaining process and why you have the mediation and then the fact finding. Then you want to get the parties settled before they get to arbitration, which is what we've been trying to do every year. And so you have to put some stakes there, and that is you're taking a risk if you put in your last best offer, right? Like that's what you're going to get. And if you pick one or pick the other, then it's really an incentive for the parties to try to settle, which is how bargaining is structured, right? It's to get the parties to settle before you reach the end. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened, but every year we're hopeful to reach agreement. And actually, we did this past time roll over the current agreement. So we were able to do that. But that's the purpose of having the last best offer.
If the arbitrators take a look at, and the fact finders each say, hey, this looks good, that looks good, and sends it, we're able to do that and send it back to each party, that you feel that would make more conflict, or may it help?
Well, that's the very last part of the process. So once they decide it's done, that's the last part of the arbitration. They have to select one of the offers, and then that's the very end of the process. So it really wouldn't give the opportunity. It doesn't provide the opportunity after that for parties.
But
to
if you
settle.
provided that before, do you think that would be rocking the boat too much, or?
That happens along the way as part of the mediation and as part of the fact finding. The fact finding is really the last step. And once we get the fact finder's report, that's usually what should really incentivize both sides to say, okay, let's meet in the middle. So
I was going to just respond to that a little bit. I was looking at the arbitration panel's written decision from the most recent round of bargaining. And from the beginning of that decision, this is what it says. This is a somewhat unusual interest arbitration proceeding. By its terms, Vermont law section 2105B2 has limited the arbitration panel's authority with respect to its final decision. The arbitrators, and then it's quoting, the arbitrators shall select one of the last best offers without amendment, end quote. In other words, the arbitration panel cannot make changes to the parties' respective proposals or render an independent decision as to what it believes would be the best solution for the continuing impasse. The arbitration panel must select either the employee's last best offer proposal in full or the employer's last best offer in full. And then at the end of the decision, it says, the arbitration panel has considered the statutory factors and reviewed the evidence and testimony in making its final decision. As stated at the outset, this panel's statutory authority is to award either the employer's LBO proposal package or the employee's LBO proposal package. It cannot accept portions of the employer's or employee's packages. Perhaps this arbitration panel would have reached slightly different conclusions than Mr. Cochran was the fact finder, as there are no clearly right or wrong answers to these weighty and complicated issues.
Do we get a copy of that?
Yes, I can send that in.
Can you get it to work?
Yes.
So how does the school contracts, the teachers' contracts compare to the state employee contracts? Are they about the same? I'm sorry, not contracts, the health insurance plans. Where do we end up right now? What do we have?
They are different types of plans. The school employees have what's called a high deductible plan. And it is, but it has the HRA layered on top of it, which takes care of that deductible. And then some little bit more than the deductible.
So is the plan then pretty much no risk to the employees, or no contribution to the employees other than, or how does it?
Yeah, I have some information I can send this into too. I think I might have provided it once to your committee, but this chart here has the information I can give each of you.
I can speak to some of those questions as well.
So you can see that it's divided on the chart, between non-licensed and licensed employees. And we have, the gold CDHP information because that's the plan that over 90% of the employees, utilize. And, we also have information for single versus 2+ members. And
So the member out of pocket exposure is the highest of 1,000 for licensed two plus.
licensed, and that would be a
Yeah.
2+. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the School Board Association has thought about a vehicle for this effort, being that the timeline that we shared was next spring. And I think negotiations start happening like during the legislative session, next legislative session. Just wondering if there's a method, a vehicle to introduce.
Perhaps the miscellaneous education bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a couple minutes. You're not on the agenda, but if you'd like to come up and
I would
Yeah.
what, thank you. And well, the next room from NEA. So we talked a little bit about when this came into effect in 2018, the statewide healthcare. Vermont educators now pay 60 million a year in premiums. And in terms of how those numbers play out, next year our members, both licensed educators and support staff, will pay $8,200 in the premiums alone. This is a 12% increase from this year, in which they will pay $7,300. And that was an 11.5% increase from the previous year. So that means in 2 years, the increase of health insurance premiums for our members have increased by 30%. Licensed educators have an average minimum salary of $46,000 roughly, and 16% of their take-home pay will go towards their health insurance premiums. After this amount is paid for as premiums, they will take home $39,000 before taxes. Those are our teachers, our licensed educators. The maximum average salary of our licensed educators is roughly $87,000. This is someone with a master's degree and over 15 years of experience. Over 8% of their salaries will go towards health insurance premiums. Their take-home pay before taxes will be around $80,000. For our paraprofessionals, it's even more stark. Their average minimum salary is $27,000. They also pay $8,200 in health insurance premiums, which means 30% of their salary goes towards premiums. After health insurance premiums are paid, they bring home a little less than $19,000 a year. Okay, that's before taxes. The maximum average salary for paraprofessionals is $35,500 roughly. Health insurance premiums for them is 23% of their income, so that they're at the highest end. Their take-home pay after these payments is $27,000. So as you can see, just the premiums alone, the out-of-pocket expenses really don't capture the whole picture here. They just simply can't pay more. This isn't an issue of the fact that, our members' benefits are too great or they're getting this great deal. It's this increasing shift in these costs that just keep rising and rising and rising. And so that's why we've been advocating all along for reference-based pricing, which would save $79 million immediately.
So, obviously, and I'm just thinking out loud, they've got the Cadillac plan. Most municipalities, they have different plans. They have a bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. So if the teachers wanted to take more money home, if they could select one of those lesser plans, maybe the spouse has got it. You can mix and match, but according to what I'm hearing, our teachers can't do that.
We don't have Cadillac plans anymore. We used to have loaded, not the, there was low deductibles, and then at some point we switched over to high deductibles, which is why Sue was talking about the HSAs, that were the funding mechanisms for the out-of-pocket. So they actually are high deductible plans.
But I think everybody runs into that, no matter what you want health insurance, if you're an employer, if what, depending on what you offer your employees, everybody's seen that 30% increase. And it does, it's driving the cost of education along with everything else that we have. So, you know, so to get out in front of it, we're gonna find a way to lower the price of insurance. Number one.
Just for consideration.
And then number two, if you offer them a layered plan so that they prefer to have more money in their pocket to take one of the lesser plans. That sounds like they should have that option. But it doesn't sound like they do have that option.
They do. There are a number of different plans. There's a silver plan as well. That's less. Most people opt for this plan. It's the best plan. I mean, who really uses the most health insurance is folks with chronic conditions. It's, 2% of the whole pool that are the drivers of the cost. And these are people that simply cannot, they don't have any benefits, right? They have a chronic condition, or they have one event in their lifetime where they become really sick. It's not the consumer driven cost, right?
And there's competition too. I
Right.
mean, we don't have that many companies operating inside of Vermont. It's not profitable. So it's kind of like Medicaid and Medicare. When some people choose to be on the Medicaid plan because it's less expensive. Some people can't, don't have any other alternative, but I got a daughter, she said she's paying $8,000 a month for her family.
And I mean, if we're talking about bargaining, I can tell you that all of this gets vetted during the bargaining process, right? Several days of fact finding, all of these points are to come up, and then arbitration, 5 days of arbitration. This is all vetted and argued in detail by both parties.
The HSAs, so, they have a high deductible, but yet is that HSA a big pool that I needed it, you didn't, so that'll cover my deductible, so I don't come out of pocket cost?
Right. The idea is that we want to protect the most vulnerable, right? We want to protect those people that have chronic conditions and people that have some event, and we're talking, if someone has cancer and then all of a sudden the costs are skyrocketing. We want to make sure that those people are protected.
Good. Where's the money for the HSA come from? Does that come paid out of their pocket, or is it out of the school, the school's pocket?
No.
For the HSA.
It's a savings account that's generated, right? And
And
then
somebody has to put the money in the account. Who's putting the money?
they're putting the money in, and then the exposure for the employees, which I haven't seen whatever Sue's provided for you, but the exposure for support staff is $300 for a single plan, $600 for a family or 2-person plan, and for the licensed professionals, it's $600 for a single and $1,000. So on top of their $8,200 in premium, teachers have an additional $1,000 that goes on top of that.
What
So
percentage of the cost is paid by teachers and what percentage by the district?
20%, and 20% for teachers and 20% for support staff. And now across the state, before we moved over to the statewide healthcare process, this was always sort of two things that were bargained against each other: salaries and healthcare. So in some communities, teachers were only paying 8%, and then we switched over to the statewide healthcare, and they all went to 20%. So that was a really big loss for some of our members, and then for support staff as well, they've all moved to 20%. And so, I mean, as I discussed, these folks are making, between $27,000 and $35,000 a year, and they went from having very small percentages for their premiums in many places to 20%. So
And
it's really crushing them out.
right, and if they have a partner that has insurance, they don't have to pay this insurance, correct?
Correct. They
Just
Okay. Not right now. What I think we have to decide is. So, Sue, tell us again the time frame here. If we were going to move forward with this in time for it to matter, would have to happen by when? This session?
Yes, because the negotiations start next April and the gathering of the data starts this fall.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope to hear from some teachers about these proposed changes. I also think that I'm still confused as to why. I'm glad we're getting the debrief as to,
That's
Yeah,
what
the
today
cost.
is today, that's what
Yeah.
today is.
but in terms of the actual law, I mean, this, in my opinion, isn't in our jurisdiction, but. I think.
Anything else from the table? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So, one more. Yeah.
Yeah, I just would respond to Senator Hashim that the last time that this was considered, it was in the Senate Education Committee. That was the Senate committee that handled the charge units.
Which aspects?
The statewide bargaining law, it was like 3 years ago
Did it go through any
Years
other
ago.
committee?
in the Senate. I don't believe so.
Sometimes things take drive-bys and.
Yeah, okay.
Saying.
Okay,
Thank you. We're happy to come back. We're happy to
Okay.
bring teachers or other members in, whatever we do now. Thank you.
figures.
Can I add one thing?
And then, so for the record.
Just in what you were,
For the record, you are-
Flor Diaz-Smith, the Vermont School Boards Association, the president of Vermont School Association. I was just wondering the broader context as we are talking about the benefits. Sometimes we don't help ourselves as Vermont schools in our ability to hire and retain teachers because the cost of healthcare is so large. So we're not able to pay our teachers what they're worth for and under salaries. And as a state, we're selling ourselves behind to not be able to attract a pool of teachers to the state. So it has a broader context than just what we're talking about right now.
So I just did think of something else. So, based on what you just said, if we had our teachers state employees? No. So if we have state employee, insurance plan, everybody that was considered a state employee would affect the teachers. So, okay.
Thanks, we just wanted a quick, understanding about this for today, if you got that.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Have a plug for universal healthcare.
All right. Yeah, maybe we could, maybe we could merge with New York State.
Yeah.
Up here in Mass, we keep it compliant, is that their idea?
So, we are, on here just another topic, now, which is, switching to performance-based contracts for school improvement projects. And this was something that, frankly, Betty Conway asked if we could take a look at a testimony about this.
Great.
It actually somewhat fits into what we're looking at to share, so.
Absolutely. From Rhode Island, right? No, I'm a Roger Williams University grad.
Okay.
I bring that up.
Yeah.
I'm a Burlington guy originally, but
So you don't know us, so we'll go around the room.
Not an issue.
Dave Weeks, Rutland County.
Seth Longers from the Bennington Senate District.
Terry Williams, also Rutland County.
Steve Heffernan, Addison County District.
And for the record, you are.
I'm Eric Lafayette. I'm a project developer with Energy Efficient Investments, and I live in South Burlington. Do have a presentation. So I will jump into it. I was born and raised in Burlington. I currently live in South Burlington. So my wife and 2 daughters who both attend public school at Orchard in South Burlington. I was part of the School Construction Aid Task Force and have been involved with school construction in the state for the last 5 years. EEI is an energy service company with an office out of Williston, Vermont, currently working with multiple school districts around the state. And I'm here to talk to you about the procurement of energy efficiency projects in K-12 schools. We operate throughout New England with a large presence in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and are familiar with school infrastructure, financing options, and long-term energy efficiency for buildings. Some of our successful clients include work with the Addison Northwest Supervisory Union, Springfield School District, Bennington Schools, Burlington School District, Missisquoi Valley Supervisory Union, and Barry Unified Union School District. One thing that I think is cool is at Springfield School District, it's been a long running partner of ours that we've been doing upgrades for the last few years. We've replaced all of their ventilation equipment at their schools. We've lowered their energy bills by over 20%, and we've been able to quantify 30% reduction in sick days for their teachers and students. And this is, we believe, directly attributed to the upgraded ventilation and enhanced filtration that we provided for the school. So next slide. Even though that
We're still, I think we're following up.
okay. Energy savings performance contracting is a solution to address the aging infrastructure, deferred maintenance at our K through 12 public schools. Performance contracts make schools more efficient, cost less to operate, and reduces the state's overall carbon footprint. The state of Vermont is facing significant challenges with their school infrastructure and has many decisions to make over the next decade on how to address the deferred maintenance. Questions could be, do we replace equipment in kind? What are the long-term operating costs of a new system? And what is the fuel source of the future? And how do we decarbonize in reasonable steps? How do we know that the money that we are spending now is going to be incorporated in the long-term vision and plans for the school district? Energy savings performance contracting is a solution that school districts can leverage to help make good long-term decisions for their school infrastructure. ESCOs will provide upfront investment grade audits on buildings at no cost to the school district, and then works with districts to select energy conservation measures that fits the goals of the district. During the initial analysis, the energy conservation measures and their costs come from similar schools in the area, and the process provides accurate budgets prior to procurement, ensuring timeliness and cost protections through construction. Once measures are selected, ESCOs will design the work and put it out to local subcontractors for competitive local pricing. The benefits for K through 12 schools are there's no upfront cost for the energy analysis and capital needs assessments. We can provide cost neutral tax options for schools where the energy savings actually pay for the work. We address long-term deferred maintenance at schools, and we provide roadmaps to infrastructure capital projects and long-term plans. And most importantly, the work that we do provides safe, healthy learning environments for our students. The typical projects that come for performance contracting include improvements to building envelopes, so your roofs, windows, walls, doors, and building insulation, mechanical systems, so boilers, ventilation, and building automation controls, plumbing, water use, water heaters, water flow, electrical systems, LED lighting, electrical transformers, switchgear, and solar. If we are upgrading school ventilation and taking out unit ventilators, it also makes sense to usually replace the ceiling tile in the roof. If we need to perform asbestos abatement to remove a unit ventilator or a door, it makes sense to abate the whole floor at the same time. When we get to certain thresholds of renovation, it triggers life safety codes, sprinklers, fire alarms, corridor ratings for fire and smoke. We're also bound by the American with Disability Act requirements, where a certain threshold of project can trigger 20% of the funds to be spent towards ADA improvements. Combining our energy projects with other capital needs at the school saves districts money and procurement time and addresses more issues than just energy efficiency. Our services, ESCOs provide turnkey options for schools from initial analysis, design engineering, financial support and information, commissioning, and then long-term reporting to verify the savings. We provide financial support, including recommendations and assistance in grant writing. We maximize state rebates through Efficiency Vermont and Burlington Electric and other rebate providers. We inform them of USDA low interest grants. We're looking for every source of funds to get these projects over the finish line because we have every incentive to do so. We recently helped Hannaford Career Center receive $96,000 in Inflation Reduction Act funds through a direct pay option with the IRS for solar project that we installed 2 years ago to no benefit to us. In New Hampshire, we're working with multiple school districts around the state on a new comprehensive building aid application that really addresses school visioning, programming analysis. And I think that's something that could be beneficial to the state when they look towards their school construction. Ultimately, we need to keep a substantial number of our schools in the state, and we need those schools to be safe, healthy, watertight, heated, and efficient. Energy savings performance contracting can do that for the state. So what I'm here for today is that there's a statute that covers performance contracting in K through 12 public schools. It requires a voter approval for energy savings that have a greater than a 10-year payback term. We're asking that it gets changed to 20 years to match the realities of energy efficiency, the life expectancy of the equipment that we're installing, and ultimately to provide more upgrades to schools at cost neutral tax impact to the voters. These changes would resemble similar laws in Vermont and surrounding states. And the reality is cost neutral projects where the energy savings pay for working 10 years is tough to accomplish and limits the ability to upgrade our schools. With a 20-year payback term, it's not unreasonable to go through and replace the LED lighting, the boilers, building controls, address roofs, windows, and other long-term capital needs. It would more closely align with Maine and New Hampshire's energy service performance contracting process, and would also align with the state of Vermont BGS requirements that have a 20-year payback term. So the specific language that we're looking for is a voter approval of proposed performance contracts. If the terms of the proposed performance contract permit the district to make payments to the contractor over a period of time exceeding 10 years, we're looking to change that to 20 years, then the district shall not enter into a final performance contract until it receives approval from the electorate to do so. And I believe this small step will help make drastic improvements at our schools and help address the aging infrastructure we face. So I really appreciate this opportunity to present in front of you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Yes.
You've been here before.
I was here last
Yeah,
year.
okay.
Sorry.
Did we do any business with you?
The state of Vermont, I have not done any business with, but I've been doing tons of work with a lot of the local municipalities and schools. We do a lot of work for the state of New Hampshire and hopefully doing some work with the state of Maine here pretty soon as well. So
Hopefully we're gonna get some construction funding pretty quick.
I mean, we've been living without construction funding, and really what we've done is help pull multitudes of different funding sources. So sometimes it's a low interest loan through USDA coupled with grants through Efficiency Vermont or Department of Energy grants through federal. And then we try to combine all these different measures and get the most return for the school districts that we can.
So are you a for-profit or not-profit?
For profit.
Okay.
How long you been in business? Company's been in business for 15 years. Actually more than that now. I think we're up to, take that back, 18 years, 2007. We've been working in Vermont, I think, for about 7 or 8 years. I think our first big project was for the Bennington schools. After that, about 3 years later, we did Virgins. I came on about 5 years ago. And since then, we've started working with Burlington School District, Missisquoi, Springfield, Barry. Hopefully picking up a few more this year as well.
And so is one of the things you do, you try to set this up so that school districts don't have to make an upfront investment
Correct.
beyond the bond, which then paid off over 20 years, because that's the time it takes to gain the.
Exactly. So we hold their hands through that initial evaluation process. We usually start with what's called like a magnitude of cost, where we identify all the different measures that are possible. And then with like historical data that we have from other places, we go, if you want to do a geothermal heat pump option, this is how much it would cost. If you want to do like an air source heat pump, if you want to stay with LP or oil, we give all those options up front. We have very good historical pricing and information on how much this costs to go with. And then we run long-term energy use and then maintenance costs along with it. So you can see what the actual cost is up front. And then we kind of hold their hand through their process, and it's kind of depending what the goals of the district are, usually helps them select which measures they ultimately go with.
Yes.
You ever do anything with buildings and grounds? The state?
I have not done, I
So-
personally have, but not through OPI.
You say the schoolhouse is, those are municipalities. So if they were under AOE, or BOCES, or we had a contract for school construction, then we'd probably be able to bid on the job.
Absolutely.
Is there anybody else in the area that does what you're doing?
Yeah, so for the most part, most of our competition are multinationals, Johnson, Train, Siemens. I think the city of Rutland works with Johnson Controls. Same with Woodstock, has done some projects with them as well. And then for the most part, there's not a whole lot of other people in this area doing it, just because performance contracting hadn't really been a big use in Vermont since we came here in the last couple of years. But there's another company, EMC, they're out of the Portland area. They've started to look and start making contacts with people up here as well. And I believe that the more people that issue RFPs for performance contracting, you'll see more of a presence.
So
from other
what does
companies.
performance contracting mean as opposed to performance financing? It says like, is it
So performance contracting is the idea that there's an energy savings guarantee with the project. So our pay essentially is determined on being able to meet this guarantee. And then we provide a measurement and verification process post-construction. And then we provide what's essentially continuous commissioning, where we work with the facility directors, building operators to make sure that their buildings maintain those energy efficiencies, usually through their building automation system. So like what controls the heating, cooling.
so do you get paid over the course of 20 years?
We do not. We get paid up front, and then we have a process where we provide essentially reporting for the first 3 to 5 years post-construction. And then if they want to continue doing reporting after that, we can set up a program. Our goal is to really be in there long term. It's not for 3 to 5 years. A lot of times it's stepped improvements where we'll go to one school, we'll do LED lighting, ventilation, boilers, and then the district might save money for a year with some capital funds, and then the next year they might address another school in their district. And we're really trying to provide that long-term planning process with energy efficiency really being kind of the backbone of our product.
You do anything with hazardous material? You said asbestos sometimes. I mean, the PCB issue, have you done any of that?
Oh yeah, yep. We're doing
Finding the lights, they're saying that the fluorescent light fixtures, so
the ballast.
the ballast.
Yeah, it does seem, I mean, so before Efficiency Vermont stopped doing the rebate on the LED program, I think that year we probably did LED replacements in 30 schools in the state. We did not see any of the ballast that we were working with have PCBs, but I know it's come up in different areas. I've heard of old ballast being stored like in a closet, and that's where they had elevated levels of PCBs. We're dealing with it. We're working with the Orleans Central Supervisory Union. Hardwick Elementary School had it seep into their concrete. So we're working with Harper Environmental as well as the AOE to replace essentially all the windows and encapsulate the paint as well. So you're the GC then, you pull in all the help that you need from subcontractors. Correct. Usually what we're doing is we design it. So we have our in-house engineers, we do mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. We work a lot with local engineers in the state for whether it's structural or architectural code reviews. We provide a magnitude of cost up front, and then we put everything out to bid with a cost plus fee structure.
So the thesis underlying what you're here for today is that some districts are not doing what they could be doing because they have to pay it back within 10 years, and it changes the short-term affordability of a project. But if they could bond out for 20 years to meet this, have the savings paid for that bond over 20 years, more of this would get done. Is that the underlying thesis here?
Correct. And it's typically leases that we're dealing with when we do it. And a lot of times, what we see is like LED lighting, solar, those have paybacks in that 10 to 11 year period, especially with the IRA money that's coming into it. And then if we tack on, say, like building automation, boilers, those might have paybacks in the 15 to 20 year period. And then we can do like window replacements, which everybody wants to do, but those actually have like a 50-year payback. So when we combine our energy projects together, it allows us to essentially tackle more of the deferred maintenance.
What's the leasing part?
The leasing part is another mechanism for the schools to be able to pay for the work. So if a school isn't,
I don't know what it is, because you can't lease windows, right?
you can lease some capital, but typically no, people are not leasing with us. Yeah, it's usually like equipment. So boilers, solar panels.
Okay.
And then at the end of the lease, the school would own that equipment.
How about geothermal? You doing any of that?
We have a big project at Integrated Arts Academy in Burlington right now, which is like a elementary school, about 55,000 square feet, turn of the century. And that's a complete geothermal project that's going to be wrapped up end of June this year.
What is the payback on that?
It's
Over 20 years.
It's over 20 years. Yes, it's about a 40 year payback term.
So at the BOCES that we passed last year was in operation, but maybe the schools could network to put RFAs out for RFPs out for work through you. You could compete for it.
Okay.
Do,
most of the other states switched to 20 years, did you say?
Yeah, so New Hampshire has a 20-year term and I believe Maine does as well. And I think the state of Vermont, BGS, actually has a 20-year term as well. It's literally just the schools that fall to the 10-year state. We do a lot of work. I don't really know what OC stands for, but is it continuing education or?
No.
No, it's,
Because they have that.
That's what you're-
I was gonna say, no,
this is different. It's for support, where school district could share, assets, educators and, equipment.
Okay,
Like they both enter into a contract together for a certain service.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
instead of one district having to hire, spending all the money and the other district having to do their own thing, they can both agree, let's both hire whatever business or contractor or service and we'll split the cost. They'll provide service to both of us. That's kind of the idea.
they do that a lot in New Hampshire. We get a lot of performance contract.
So who would we need if we were gonna go forward with this? Who would we need to hear from? Treasurer or who might have there's a reason it's been 10 years.
Yeah, with that maybe?
No, it's, people, this was.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the history of the statute, if whenever it was made, whoever was in this committee just picked 10 years, just assuming that. I have no idea what they would be assuming.
My only, somewhat of a guess is that 10 years, I think 20 years ago, when this was originally passed, like mid 2000s, finding those 10-year paybacks were a lot easier.
Yeah.
There was a lot more opportunity for LED lighting
Stuff was
replacements. Yeah, stuff was cheaper and then, Efficiency Vermont was essentially incentivizing more of these things. So we couple all of those in to try to get in that 10-year term. And I think with, a lot of that low hanging fruit really has been addressed.
And is this 20-year term that's suggesting adhere only to energy efficiency projects, or is it just funding?
This is like leasing more so. For performance contracts. Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have your testimony?
I will send it to
You
you.
got a slide presentation.
I have a slide presentation that went, and then I wrote everything out because I realized the last time I presented in front of you guys could have done a lot
Yeah,
better.
because your recommendation would be good. if We have them in writing.
Okay, yeah. And then, I can certainly, if you guys want to talk with business managers or facility directors, the way that we get our business is all word of mouth. So essentially all of our business is repeat people essentially recommending us to other schools in the state. And that's how we've essentially grown so much in the last 5 years since we've opened up our Vermont office.
Patty, you can send Will the exact language you're looking for.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we'll just, so we have it. Yeah. Any other questions?
What's the vehicle changes?
I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah, it could go this way, and that's if you were gonna do it. At some point we have, even with miscellaneous, you can run into issues of whether it's germane, but probably this would work. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. So maybe I'll be back again next year just to say. So
Maybe we'll be here too.
We will be there. Thank you.
see you guys.
I want to know about that.
They're still going.
But we're never gonna see that.
Yeah. So we do have new language, right? On the need.
Yes, in the-
It's in the draft, there's what there's work, okay. So we had been working. We're now on 5.1.
5.1, yeah.
And I think. What got added, Will?
I believe yesterday.
The global program at the very end.
That coming in today?
Page 20. Well, she was, but she'll be on the floor. If we want to state they'll be.
That is a solid no.
Okay.
Sure. I know, not me playing.
Oh, we have actually two sets. We also have. Did Beth change the language on the mission program?
Yes.
Okay, well, anyway, let's look at page, or if we can take a look at page 20 first. Should go. Page 20, 5.1.
Next to the last.
I've got to walk us through it, but that looks good, right? We can probably look at page 12 as I recall from yesterday.
And this was to change it so that students get their diploma that did it. Right? That's what the.
Yes, remember that, we got that glitch in the, yeah, the one just bill. So if I'm looking at this right, the work we had General Harder here yesterday. Starts on page 12, but it's like the changes begin on page 14. Again, I want a lot of people to that, but for the questions.
That's 12.
Yeah, so if I can, on page 14, starting with line 6 to line 10, there was feedback from the guards from General Harder that we should consider not making a requirement that the applicants for the program be full-time Vermont residents, because many of the guard members, and I don't have a percentage of from out of state, but we're trying to still incentivize them to join the Guard, the Vermont Guard.
Sure.
So that's that language probably will get introduced to have to get wrapped into the version.
So now it always has required that right, that you are working in Vermont.
No.
Is that true?
Well, working, but not, you didn't have to be a resident. Because the Guard has New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts.
So here it does
They
say,
have units, they actually have units in those states.
but employed full-time in Vermont.
It does, but it's an
Here's the
underlying
back.
section. So
Yeah.
you
Is the, anyway, yes, that could, I don't know whether it's for that part is good or not.
no, it's not.
Okay.
That's a recommended update. Came-
Okay, that's a
came this
recommended
afternoon.
update, the whole, okay, I didn't know if the full-time employment, even though this is a new section,
We're asking them all that.
was still there, okay. So.
Yeah, you want me to read? General Harder's.
Sure.
So, we do not feel that a Vermont National Guard member should be mandated to either live in Vermont or be looking for a job in Vermont to take advantage of pursuing a graduate degree through this program. A significant number of our drill status, which is part-time members, live and work outside of Vermont. We benefit greatly from the participation of these members in the Vermont National Guard. We do not want to exclude them from the opportunity to pursue a graduate degree just because they live outside or work outside of Vermont. That's it.
So how's that getting in? Was it just added?
That's maybe that,
Yeah.
track the history
History of the history. So then we go down to. We see we have to be enrolled at UVM, the State College of College, undergraduate certificate, undergraduate degree or graduate degree. Training institution approved with certificate or credential recognized by VSAC. where's the two?
Page 16.
So that last one, we want to take out employed by Vermont or non-employed, correct? Amend it.
Yeah, words not that.
So Senator, we're on, draft 5.1 of 14. We're just looking at the language. We're now on page 16, looking at the language that we worked on with General Harder yesterday. And we're gonna wait for, well, not wait for Beth today, but do a true walkthrough of Beth before it's done. Just take a quick look at this.
On 16.
Yeah. I'd be worried about this on one level. If I asked that question of General Harvey yesterday about whether they had the inherent authority to prioritize within this, because there is a limited amount of money. And this is a very generous benefit. I'm not fine with it, but it's generous. And I would want to make sure that if it came down to it, everybody got, if there was only enough for everybody to get one, I'd want them to be able to get that one before somebody else got two. But asking that question of General Harder yesterday, he responded, they have the inherent authority to shape the program within the guard systems in a way that makes it
The way I read that, and I've experienced it where somebody needs to get a degree for promotion or the state to be qualified to stay on as an officer or
so they
whatever.
might have.
Then the command authority can say, you're the priority. That's what I read.
More than likely, if you did put in that you were gonna try for 2 degrees at once, that they'd say, well, get one and then. Because there's guys that do, people that do try that.
Or even if you were going for your second degree, if there were not enough money to go around, you'd probably be the one that he was told about this time. But anyway, I got comfortable enough that they've got the inherent authority of it to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's well managed and controlled.
It is. Matter of fact, that non-commissioned officer who was with him, he's the education NCL, so he views every request that comes in and helps the commander make a decision on. Yes.
Okay. That's we've lost our last hour because of Beth being on the floor.
Can we do it? A committee trip to the House floor once?
Yeah, I guess we should.
Oh, confirmation.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my guys still haven't got that. Hold on, so. Man.
Okay, so shall I?
Yes.
Okay, so gonna go back into February. Fine. A couple, we had, so the chair has taken care of the Secretary of Education, which the report out says complete. Board of Libraries, we had two nominees, one which Senator Heffernan.
And he has not contacted me back yet. I'll
Okay,
ping him by email.
Yeah.
I tried texting.
okay, yeah, just try again. If you don't get a response for the second method, then we'll feed back to the governor's office. We're unable to get contact. And let's see if they have an alternative. Maybe have the correct phone numbers that we've got identified. The second one for the Board of Libraries is from Western. Yeah, that's correct. And Community High Schools of Vermont Board. Sarah Sheeb, you had a Melissa Dawson on a Putney. Bring it on.
Yep.
So I'll make sure that it's on the same. State Board of Education, Sarah Wade's, you had Cal.
Yep.
Greenwood, Troy, student member.
Yes, he's in. I got his prepared to, if I can find it.
You prepared to report on?
Yeah,
That's up to the chair.
yeah, we see if I can find it.
While he looks, just to give you an update on mine, you recall that I contacted her once about a new 4-year term, and she said I was just reappointed 2 years ago, got here in front of me. Then Will checked with the governor's office, and they thought she, for some reason, did need to be reappointed. So I've now got John Brewer looking into whether she does or doesn't. So there was some confusion.
Yeah, I've got a similar situation. Melissa was a little confused. And she said she's been on the board and thought her process was all set, didn't know I was reaching out to her. And that was the last communication. I mean, are these nominations that are getting reported on the floor or?
No.
Well, they get reported in the journal
The ones they can't.
for the calendar.
Yeah.
They're not on their line.
Okay,
And some of them would be reported just as the Secretary of Education would report.
Yeah.
Most of these would not.
how do they, just out of curiosity, how do they distinguish who gets? Where the underlining happens and who doesn't?
I don't know.
Only that, right?
Yeah. I don't have a second who does that.
Ask John.
But you found it.
So I did, yeah.
Okay, we're ready for your.
Yeah, so I finally got a hold of him. He was kind of a hard guy to read, but, from Troy. Yeah, he's been on the board since August 2024, so he's been on it for a while. Junior attending Lake Region High School. And I asked him why he wanted to be a student member. And he said because he's interested in state education process. And believes, believes in the process. He told me that his grandfather was a influential figure in his life, and he was a state senator in the General Assembly.
What was his name?
I don't know. I think, thinks he wants to attend college after high school, take political science, and is interested in the governance of the state legislature. His interests are golf in the summer, and outdoor track in the fall. And he said that he is allowed to participate during the board meetings. So he really, he really felt engaged, talking about school events and what he wanted. So I recommend Caleb.
So how long is this term for?
It's from until June 30th, 2026. From July 1st, 2024.
So he's been on for a while.
He
He's
has.
never got confirmed for something.
Yeah.
Will, can I have you send me that? Yeah.
So then we need, I think we need a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we confirm this.
We need a second.
All in favor?
Okay. You all report that.
What? Yes, yeah, no,
Report that to Melissa.
501. Yep, yeah, I'll send back up.
She was just here, looking to see if she had anything.
This one. Okay. All right, so we have 7 more. One of them is a duplicate, yours, so I'll make sure that that's feedback that's a duplicate. But one of them is former Senator Campion.
I'll do that.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
well, good luck tracking them down.
Yeah,
I was gonna call it later anyway, so if I can get them all. Do the okay.
So I'll tell you what, I'll give a couple of hometowns and see if anybody just jumps up and says that's more. So Newport, South Royalton, Essex, Eastover, and Montpelier.
Duty still, that long.
It's Rich Renner. Renner, State Board of Education. I'll put the, yeah. Okay, I didn't have any from the last go round. So I'll take three. I'll just take the next top three. So, trustee for the Vermont State Board, Colleges Board of Trustees. Bailey Lau, Glenn out of Newport. Shirley Jefferson, member of the Vermont State Board of Colleges Board of Trustees. Unless you have any objections. And interesting name is a Malucci, Jason Malucci. Okay, Jason.
Yeah.
For what I think it's.
It's a different one.
Yeah. So trustee to the University of Vermont Agricultural College Board of Trustees.
No, it's probably Jason.
Out about it. Yeah, assets. Okay, so we've got two more. Senator Heffernan and Senator Williams, if you guys want to spar over. No, there's one more, only one more. It's Susan Zeller out of Montpelier, trustee to the Vermont State Board of Colleges Board of Trustees. Vermont State College Board of Trustees.
For our motion, if you want it, you can have it, or I'll take it.
Who do you go to? Terry. That's it. Okay, and then I'll update this sheet just so everybody knows
Do
where
I
we
have that to put in my file, copy of it, or?
Yeah, so you have the contact information. And if you would, so actually we'll go back to Wednesday, March 12th at 8:09 a.m. So email you sent out to the Senate Education, just send it out again. It's got the contact info.
All right.
Yeah, it's got the phone number.
Oh, I'm sure I can find it.
Well, just we could just send it out. We have it.
Just put it right back on file.
I need my copy.
What's the name of it?
John, so.
Susan Zeller out of Montpelier, trustee at the Vermont State College Board of Trustees.
Okay, so we're, I don't know if we're all in the room. So next week, we're gonna do a couple of joint hearings, but we're gonna do them here. On Zoom with finance. For Tuesday and Wednesday, both for a good chunk of our time. Doing a walkthrough of the House bill.
And this here.
I'm in the room now. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, this room, H, whatever it is, with the Senate.
How quickly can we get a copy of their, what the finished product today? I get some time this weekend, I could be looking at all.
We won't be able to get a finished product, that's the thing, because, but, yeah, you just won't be able to, you could get what passed yesterday. But
Oh,
it
I think I've got
got amended a fair amount today.
Yeah, we had like 5 amendments.
Knows what other amendments came up.
Yeah. But we'll do so we'll do a complete walkthrough on Tuesday, Wednesday. So with that, we are adjourned.